Coalition luncheon, and we serve on several different boards together and meet virtually throughout the month on many different occasions. So it was really nice to see her in person.
So who's all going to the Working in Oregon in Bend?
Working together?
Working
Yes.
together. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you there.
Yeah, that's going to be so fun. Good afternoon, Susan. Let's see here. Sydney, will you give me a thumbs up when we are at quorum?
We are not quite at quorum yet,
Okay.
but we do have a couple of people that won't be able to make it today, so I'm not sure if we'll make quorum today.
All right. Well, then I say, if it's okay with you all, we go ahead and jump into today's meeting. The items that we need to call a vote on can just wait until that time if we do hit quorum today. How do you feel about that, Chris?
Sorry, I was muted. I think sounds good.
All
I have
right.
my dog in my office. She just knocked over her food bowl and now she's drinking out of her pottery bowl. So
Wonderful. I'm glad to know you're in
Distracting.
good company. Good company today. Well, good afternoon, friends. It is 3:02 p.m. We'll go ahead and call today's Continuous Improvement Committee meeting to order. As we jump into today's agenda, I just want to share something with you all briefly. This popped up on my LinkedIn feed yesterday. The trees are about to show us how lovely it is to let things go. So welcome fall, embrace it. Don't be afraid to keep the things that are filling your life with purpose and joy, and those that are not. I hope that you can find ways to let them go and add greater joy into your daily lives, into your families, and into the communities that you all serve. We are going to jump right into public comment, and really excited to welcome Stacy Green today to speak to the group. Stacy,
thank you so much. Thank you for letting me speak, and I have written my comments down and mindful of the 3-minute time limit. So my name is Stacy Green, and I have created an entrepreneur program for rural teens that I believe successfully addresses many of the challenges outlined in the talent assessment report that came out in May. I have been running this program in Wallowa County for 14 years, funded initially by a 3-year grant from Oregon Community Foundation for tutoring and mentoring, and that's been administered by the local nonprofit Building Healthy Families ever since. The program costs $12,000 to run in Wallowa County, and we have an average of 10 teens in the program each year, and it's for juniors and seniors only. I am speaking with you today in hopes that you can tell me how we might help other communities enjoy the kinds of results that we have seen in Wallowa County. For example, 30% of our past participants have returned to the county with the degrees and the skills that our workforce needed, including accounting, finance, sales and marketing, business administration, software engineering, and leadership and management. 4 past participants used their entrepreneurial skills to start their own businesses and in the county, and then another 10% have started businesses outside the county. All the teens in the program developed their essential employability skills, learning time management, problem solving, business communication, and most importantly, how to be self-directed. The program has produced 11 Ford Scholars. One of those went on to Lewis and Clark and co-founded the Entrepreneurship Club there. Another became the executive vice president of U of O's Business and Economic Club, and he was a first-generation college student. We have had about 10% of our participants qualify as homeless. We've had valedictorians and teens from the alternative high school. This program has proven to serve all students, regardless of resources, since it is free to all. One of those formerly homeless teens got an accounting degree from Eastern Oregon University and is now the director of finance at our hospital. He owns 2 homes. The teens that have returned are getting married, buying homes, and starting families, with 19 kids born to this group, increasing our population of young families significantly. The challenge is that all rural communities and economic development organizations The challenge is that all rural communities and economic development organizations have reduced out-migration of youth and support entrepreneurship and small business at the top of their list of priorities. According to your report, the majority of employers do not think most applicants have essential employability skills. This program addresses those issues. However, the communities that do want to implement this program have run into multiple challenges getting funding. In Halfway, Oregon, Debbie Lawrence is working for free and struggled to get the few $1,000s to run her summer program after a successful pilot last year. She covered the balance out of her pocket, and now she's depending on a private funder. My understanding is that there is over $200 million for the Future Ready grant program, in addition to countless other funding floating around. So my question is, what is the channel by which a successful rural teen entrepreneur program proven to deliver results, both for the teens that are in the program and the communities they're from, gets scaled to other communities?
Thank you so much, Stacy. Todd and Andrew, do you have any direction or ideas that you might be able to offer to Stacy?
Yeah, this is Todd. I can jump in really quick. Apologies. I'm driving, so I'm going to just keep the video off. Stacy, thank you so much for that great information. Now that you spoke about your program, I remember it a little bit. I think there might be a great opportunity for you to come back to maybe our executive committee meeting in one of those in the future, as well as potentially one of our full board meetings, and present and have a conversation with folks on the exec and full board. I just don't think we have necessarily the time to jump into that today. We're also going to be in October at our executive committee meeting talking about similar sort of strategies in terms of when best practices that come up and have positive outcomes where we can definitely see a line to a significant return on invested dollar. What can we do as a board to move that work forward? So I guess probably enough said. I would just love for you to connect with me in the next few days, and we can sort of strategize on what might be next to engage with you.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And yes, I was just approaching you guys hoping that you might be able to direct me to the right agency or person. So Todd, what is the best way to follow up with you?
Email be great. If you
I
have
put his email in the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I can also send that to you, Stacy.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you so much.
And Kaylin, we do have quorum.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. Really appreciate your time today. As mentioned, the Ford Family Foundation has successfully awarded 11 scholarships to students who have gone through this program. I can speak firsthand at the difference that it's making. So kudos to you, Stacy, and the work that you're doing and the futures that you're making brighter and the lives that you're touching. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for letting me speak to you all. I appreciate it. And I'll follow up with Todd and wish you all a great day.
All right. Oh, Debbie, did you have a question?
I was just going to react with a thumbs up and I hit the wrong button. So
Thank you. And
I love
I
those
am
reactions.
planning to exit now. Is that all right? Let you guys get on with your meeting. All right.
Thanks
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Mhm.
All right. And ladies and gentlemen, we do have quorum looking for a motion to approve the July 2024 continuous improvement meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the July 2024 meeting minutes.
Thank you,
Second.
Debbie. Thank you, Brent, with the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or wishing to abstain? Excellent. Meeting minutes passed. Thank you all. And it looks like we're handing the floor over to our friends with the Coraggio Group. Jen and Susan, take it away.
Great, thank you all so much. Just before we sort of share screen and get into our agenda, just wanted to say hello. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting everyone on this group before, so I just wanted to do a quick introduction. I'm Jen Gray O'Connor. I'm a Senior Associate Principal with Coraggio Group, and it's my pleasure to work on this project with Susan. I feel my background is in public administration, local government, but I feel like I'm learning so much working on this project because you all have a very complicated task ahead of you to work on the system. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to learn so much and to work with you. Susan, is there anything by way of introduction that you would like to do before we jump in?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. Susan Karosky with Coraggio Group. Some of you look familiar. As you may or may not recall, I was a partner in solutions on the very first KIC initial assessment and also worked on the governance assessment. So I am so happy to be back here working on this phase of the assessment and look forward to partnering with you all over the next couple months as we get ready for the report for the governor's office due on December 15th.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Yes, thank you for grounding us in what we're really working towards. Well, let me share screen and we'll kind of go over some of the information that we'd like to share with you today and kind of cue us up for what we will be looking to accomplish in our work sessions here in October. Maybe starting with our agenda, we got the chance to do welcome, brief introductions. We'd like to share with you an updated project timeline so that we can show you what progress has been made and what activities we have in the future. Then we're going to get into a more specific update on the current interviews that we've accomplished, some of the state benchmarking work that we're doing, as well as some of the questions that we're asking, and then really ground us in some of our initial observation. This is kind of the meat of what we want to do today, is share with you some places where we saw bright spots and places where we can really see some needed continuous improvement efforts. And then we'll end today just talking a little bit again about those October sessions, what we're hoping to accomplish and kind of grounding us in the work ahead. But I'll start just with a quick project overview. The good news is, and I feel like I never get to say this, is that we are actually really good according to this timeline. I have to say that in and of itself is a huge reason for celebration, because there's often something that shifts the timeline and that's normal and okay. But when we put it forward and we're able to keep on track, that's even better. So you can see we're right at the process of kind of rounding out our data gathering through this task 2. So that's including best practice gathering, partner outreach, and starting to really bring together some of our assessment recommendations. You can see, as Susan mentioned, we're really aiming towards December 13th. We'll be presenting the report to the WTDB and then landing that report on the governor's desk in mid-December. And just to ground us really quick on our partner outreach approach, so we're conducting interviews, and some of you have had the opportunity to speak with already. What we're really looking to understand with a kind of depth that an interview gives us, folks' perspective from all different places within the system. So we had the opportunity to do a focus group with the OWP, talking to representatives at OED, talking to the leads at WESIT, able to talk to folks here in the KIC committee, as well as agency representatives from ODHS, as well as the governor's office. And then in terms of state benchmarking, we've already had the opportunity to meet with Kentucky and Texas to kind of understand how is their model operating, what kind of best practices would they recommend, and how can we really suss out differences between the Oregon system and other states. And so you'll see us gather some additional feedback from Michigan, Colorado, Florida, and New Jersey in the coming weeks. And then just another way of kind of looking at that, you can see we've done 2 of those benchmarking interviews and then 19 interviews. And so we're really looking in terms of our topics at, centralized versus decentralized funding, improvements to the intake and IMatch process, improvements to the benefits navigator, how folks are understanding the system, how folks are understanding roles and responsibilities, what the perception is in terms of governor and legislative support. And then finally, what are some continuous improvement efforts that we can look to, and what are kind of the data gathering practices that help us know that we're making a positive community impact. Just to give a kind of deeper dive on that, you can see what we're doing is really starting at those recommendations and understanding, what's already been implemented, what needs to be implemented, and then again, how are we going to know that you're making a positive impact due to the implementation of some of these recommendations. Another view, and again, those folks who have already gone through the interview process, this is probably very familiar. You can see these are the subject areas and the specific questions that we're asking each of our interview subjects to understand. And some have sort of deep access to the kind of interface with job seekers or employers. And some folks are sort of leveled in a position where they're really producing data, or they're in charge of implementing information about the definition of the system, or really advising on roles and responsibilities. So we're looking for folks who have all different positions within the system at this point. Susan, before I hand it off to you, is there anything that you would like to add to our current efforts?
No, but I'd love to hear from members of the KIC, questions, thoughts, comments they have. We're about, as Jen mentioned, just midway through the stakeholder partner engagement process. So would love to hear if people have questions, thoughts, comments before we go on and share some initial observations. Who's got something?
I have a question. How are our local workforce directors being involved in this process?
Jen, would you like me to answer that? Did you want to answer that?
Go for it.
So our primary engagement with the local workforce boards has been through the OWP. We attended their meeting. If there's a local workforce board member that sits on the WESID or on another governing board, we're also interviewing them independently, one-on-one. So we had a series of questions and topics for discussion at the OWP meeting, and we had a separate set of questions for if a local workforce board member was a member of a governing body. Kaylin, did I answer your question, or do you have a follow-up question to that?
No, thank you.
Oh, thanks for the question. Who else has got a question, thought, comment on just the efforts to date of who we've been talking to and what we've been talking about? Hi, I see your hand, Craig.
Yeah, so maybe I missed it here, but has any of this material and progress to date been sent out to this committee?
I believe it was part of the material that Sydney sent in advance, Craig. Sydney, can you let me know when that information went to the KIC?
Yeah, sure thing. I will look at the timestamp right now, but Craig, I can also forward it to you right now if you'd like.
Okay, no, that's fine. If you've sent it out, it's probably just been in the last couple of days then. I just haven't reviewed it all yet.
It should have been this morning. I tried to send one the day of the meeting, just top of the inbox.
I haven't seen this yet, so it'll be really difficult for me to give you a very in-depth statement about this. And I do appreciate the question about workforce boards. And honestly, I mean, as the chief elected for one of 4 counties, I'd like for my executive director to at least have conversations with their executive committee about this. And so while I appreciate the work OWP does and its directors, I still think that for this body to be effective, we probably ought to hear from each of our workforce boards.
Okay, thanks for that, Craig. Appreciate that. So Jen, if you can make a note of that, we will for sure reach out to your director of your board. We'll, if we're not able to get time with them, because I think, Craig, we're on a timeline, right, to get the report done for the governor, and we have these work sessions with the KIC coming up next week. We will for sure send the questions and give an opportunity to collect the information that way. Does that work, Craig? I just want to make sure that we're meeting your need.
Well, it might work, but again, the objective here for this continuous improvement committee really does need to include those partners. So we need to do everything we can to help encourage those directors to respond and give us a hand.
Yep. Appreciate that, Craig. Appreciate the thought. And just a quick follow-up from our meeting with the OWP, Jen, they did all get the questions, and we did say like, hey, if there's more that you want to add or share, please follow up with us, but we'll make sure we're closing that loop, Craig. So appreciate that and understand the importance of those partners in the overall system and the process for continuous improvement. Debbie, I think I see your hand. Is that correct?
Yes. So I got an interview this past week from someone from Future Ready dollars, talking about the Future Ready grants and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if you're coordinating with them, or if you need to, but it does seem like they're doing a pretty intense interviewing and reaching out to employers, and some of that insight might be helpful to what we're doing as well. So I just didn't know if there was cross-functional information. And then I don't remember anyone asking me these questions, but maybe I did. And I don't know the same question that was asked. If that report came out, I don't know where it is or in my inbox either. So if I overlooked it, I'm sorry, but I think they are good questions to ask just by, reviewing them. And I would be interested in hearing what outcomes you have. And are you getting it to employer groups? Food Northwest, may have some big manufacturing employers that could speak in on it. I just throw that out. The Port of Morrow, Anna Brown Workforce Development here in this economic region certainly has contacts to get out or to make sure their voices are heard. So if we can help as members of this board getting more people to help answer questions or surveys or anything else, happy to do that too.
Thanks for that, Debbie. For your first part about Future Ready, Jen, I know that you've had some conversations around Future Ready. Can you speak to what Debbie's saying about coordinating with their outreach efforts, or do you have any insights into that?
I do. Yeah, Debbie, I think that's an excellent point. And we have been working with the Future Ready Grants Administrator, to get her perspective, and then also in order to get some background documentation and data that they're looking at for the Future Ready program. And so she's been fabulous about putting that background information and their reporting into our background documents. So we have coordination that way, but I appreciate that that's such an important touch point and making sure our efforts are in line with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And about your question about broader outreach, Debbie, I think it's the next slide, Jen. Is the next slide Plan, Do, Check, Act? I just want to make sure that if I've got the flow of the report correct. Is that correct?
Next we get to get into our findings.
Okay.
Thought maybe the Plan, Do, Check, Act would be something that you all have seen in the past, but Susan, if you want to elevate that and kind of reground us in the continuous improvement effort, that'd be great.
Yep. So I just want to make sure, I know that when we came back, when we were here last month, and we talked about, hey, we're kicking off our effort. Here's kind of the approach we're going to take. And a big part of our effort is really checking. If you think about continuous improvement and the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, it's checking on the recommendations from the initial assessment and the recommendations from the governance assessment. So we've really focused our outreach on those that had control or influence over making those recommendations happen and what the impact has been of implementing those recommendations. So I just want to make sure that the committee is really grounded in where we're at in the continuous improvement cycle and kind of the focus of our questions and who we've been reaching out to and things like that. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear with everyone. Okay, Jen, let's go to, if there's nothing else, let's go to the next slide so we can share. Again, we're only about halfway through our outreach efforts right now, but we wanted to highlight a few bright spots, things we're hearing, again, in the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. So we're checking based on the initial assessment, based on the governance assessment, the two assessments that have been done by the Continuous Improvement Committee and submitted to the governor to date, where are we seeing some bright spots? And one of the bright spots is that one of our recommendations from the initial assessment was, make sure that OED's modernization efforts took into consideration the improvement opportunities that could come either through the intake process or iMatch. And the bright spot is that even though OED's modernization efforts aren't scheduled to go live in 2026, they are doing a pretty thorough job of taking into consideration the initial learnings from the initial recommendation and the requirements and the needs of both the local workforce boards and the customers, being the job seekers and the employers. So again, they're at the, finalize the business case. They're at stage 2 of their stage gate process. So they haven't released their RFP yet, but in looking through all their information and speaking with OED officials, they're really taking all of the potential improvement opportunities that have been served up by the KIC in the initial assessment and taking that into consideration as they're thinking about potential solutions. Again, modernization efforts won't be going live until probably earliest mid-2026, but they're definitely working their process and keeping those customer needs in mind as they're doing that. So a good bright spot. Where you have high touch, relationship oriented, regionally focused staff, one of the recommendations from the initial assessment was to make sure that engagement with the customers, both job seekers and employers, was very human centered, was very relationship oriented and not so much transactional. And in the conversations and information we've gathered to date, we are seeing that. So where you have regionally focused staff that know their communities and are embedded in their communities, we are seeing that is having a big impact on the customer experience because they're taking very much a human relationship oriented approach into how folks are interacting with the system. So another great bright spot there. One of the findings from the initial assessment was, that there may not have been a lot of standardization in how service was being delivered across the system. And another bright spot that, the system has great operating standards that are updated and they're available for all regions. And in some regions, they're actually rolled out and being implemented. So, thinking about what's happening on the ground at the centers, that standardization is happening and getting rolled out if it hasn't been rolled out already. And in all our conversations to date, we have heard that yes, we are making improvements, but we want to make sure that the improvements we're making have a bigger impact on the system. So when you think about shared values, shared mental models, or shared thinking of how your work as a continuous improvement committee can have impact on the system, there seems to be great consensus of we want to have a bigger impact. Let me stop here. I'd love to hear questions, thoughts, comments on the bright spots that we have heard to date in our initial findings of being about halfway through our partner engagement process. Who has questions, thoughts, comments? Hi there, Anne. Thanks for going first.
And I apologize. I don't know what's wrong with my camera. It won't activate, but on that last point, I think the feedback that we hear, from our board on the WTDB and just in general, would say put a really fine point on that. Like once this report comes out, like what are we going to do about being really outcome oriented? So we heard this, we're going to do this and be, very specific timelines and get after stuff. So I'm glad that you called that out on there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Appreciate the comment. Appreciate you going first. Who else has question, thoughts, comments on the initial bright spots we're hearing from our work to date? I'm going to keep us moving. I'm usually pretty good with silence, but I'm going to keep us moving. But, you know, we're also identifying additional opportunities and again, we're about halfway through our partner engagement process. So I'm just going to go through these one by one, then we'll open it up for question, thoughts, comments again. So the operating standards, we know that they're out there. We know that some of the regions have embraced it, fully implemented it, but not all the regions have them fully rolled out yet. And we haven't been able to identify what the impact of the standards will be on the customer experience. So that's something that as you as a continuous improvement committee may want to consider is the next evolution of the standards or in performance management around the standards, getting really clear about what is the specific customer impact we're hoping that these standards will deliver. We're also hearing that people still don't know exactly what's happening across the system. And in the governance assessment, which was the second assessment, there was a lot of conversation that we had about clarifying roles and responsibilities between the KIC, the WTDB, the WESIT, and the information flow and the clarity around roles and responsibilities still isn't fully working right yet, and that's okay. It's a work in progress. You've got a strong definition of the system now that you didn't have at the time of the governance assessment, but there's still work and improvement opportunities to do there in both having information flow so people know what's happening across the system and having clarity around roles and responsibilities across all the various boards. What we're also hearing is that there is data and information, but it's not being really consolidated to give a holistic picture of the performance of the system, and that there isn't the accountability and reporting infrastructure. So if there is data, it's maybe in regionally oriented or in pockets, and it's not really looked at as a system view, and there's not great accountability or reporting infrastructure to follow up from a continuous improvement perspective about what is this data and information telling us? How can we continue to improve the system? And even though improvements to the system are considered important, especially by folks that we're interviewing, we haven't been able to get a good sense of what is the level of importance of improvements to the system by the governor's office. So that was a finding from the governance assessment about the role of the governor and the importance of the governor having a strong view onto the system. And we're still not quite there yet, or we're still hearing we're not quite there yet. So those are our initial opportunities that we're hearing about in our conversations with partners halfway through the process. And I see your hand. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts, questions, comments might be.
You're so funny. Just a thought on when the report comes back on the data piece. One of the things we've talked about is, you know, sort of the need to share information and figure out a way to kind of open up channels of sharing data. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to talk about that in the report that will create momentum for the overall system to prioritize that. I think we heard in the Talent Summit last May, you know, some examples from other states where they've been able to kind of break through that. And I'm just hoping that as part of our continuous improvement journey, we can sort of, I don't know what the issues are. I'm not that as close to as I probably should be, but I think we need to figure this out because I think it is really hamstringing many parts of the system. And I would love for this to be able to sort of create, you know, sort of a way of talking about it that then helps us create a call to action for ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Appreciate that. Agree 100%. I think there's a couple of key unlocks here, you know, related to continuous improvement and managing the performance of the system. And that's a great one. And as we talk about the work sessions coming up in October, we'll be able to dive a little bit deeper on how we might be able to help and support making sure that the report is very action oriented and tangible and how to maybe create some additional unlocks in this area. Craig, I see your hand, then Debbie, I see your hand. So we'll go Craig first, then Debbie. Hi, Craig. Thanks for
Hi,
chiming
thank
in.
you. So I really appreciate the last bullet point here. And I mean, I harken back to the reason why there was a Senate bill that got us to this in the first place. There's a lot of us out here that can continue to tout the things that we think need to be changed and some of the challenges that we see. But I really think it's important for us to have some sense of what is, the state's executive director, executive officer's position, and what's the thoughts and position from leadership in agencies that are meant to get this work done, and not just WTDB. And again, that's an advisory position. So I'm very curious as you go forward that we get not necessarily names, but statements from folks that are in leadership positions about this, because this is the reason why we're in this position.
Yeah, it's a great point, Craig. And one of the things that we're going to be bringing forward in our work sessions in October is when you think about continuous improvement, there's a continuum of change, right? And if you think about more evolutionary change, it's small incremental change, kind of working around the edges, and you can create systems change through that. It takes a long time to make that happen, right? And if you think of the continuum of change more on the revolutionary side of change, that's more disruption. That's, mandates, it's, large investments, things like that, or more streamlined investments. And one of the things we'll be working with you all in October is talking about that continuum of change, thinking about your key levers, and then, acknowledging where you're at in the continuum of change now and where you might want to be. And our hope is that by creating kind of this, model of thinking about change and the work of the KIC and how it interrelates with the governor and other leaders, we can at least start to get a common level of understanding about where do you want to be on this continuum of change. Because in the absence of having alignment around that, you could have, the governor thinking, oh, we're just doing great. We're plugging along. It's going to be really small incremental change over a long period of time. And others could be wanting something a little bit more revolutionary. So I don't know, but I appreciate the comment, Craig. And I guess I'm just giving you a little teaser for what's going to happen in the work sessions in October that hopefully is going to help us create some different thinking and different mental models around your work on the KIC with the governor and other key leaders.
I just want to make certain to add this piece in, because this is a big deal across the state in a lot of different groups. We need to be asking the question about actual dollars, investment, and prioritization in those investments across our workforce development planning in the state. And so we can't neglect asking the question about investments, because that is a huge problem that we're running into for all of our workforce boards and the partners of workforce development boards.
Yep. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that additional point. Really appreciate it. Debbie, I see your hand. Thanks for being patient.
Yes. So I was wondering about, and this is maybe farther down the road, but it might apply during the process, but these agencies, these different WTB, CIC, WISET, and whoever else, workforce boards, and I wonder, is there an opportunity? Because I don't think that in my time on the workforce talent board that we've actually had everybody in the same room from these different agencies and groups. And if this plan or findings involves many of them, like I just mentioned, Future Ready, and then we talk about Eastern Oregon Workforce Board, we talk about all these other people. Is there a plan or something that'll be developed in the course of this work that will help us determine that we do need to be together and we do need to have a member of the governor's staff there supporting what we're doing, and talk about those things that are going well, but also the things that need more attention and what those plans might be. And so we're working more uniformly together. And I'm on another board that I've seen this now. The governor has pushed forward to bring 3 agencies together. and the local community. And I'm really thrilled to see that progress, because now you've got people that have resources and different knowledge coming together at one place. So I think that might be an opportunity for this work as well.
Thanks, Debbie. Appreciate that. Paul, I see your hand, but before I go to you, I just want to give Todd, I know Todd, you're driving. Todd, is there any immediate thoughts to answer Debbie's question about bringing all these groups together in conversation? I think you would be the person that might be best able to answer it, but I also know you're driving.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. A couple of thoughts, Debbie. One, of course, the reason for the prescriptive membership of the State Workforce Board here in Oregon and every other state in the union is around that, so that there are not only you great business people in the majority helping set agenda and drive change and improvement, but also so that the state agency enterprise is represented by all of the critical agencies. And so we already obviously have a table where you have the executive director or director of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission in Ben Cannon, David Gerstenfeld at OED, Saporn over at Business Oregon, was on the state board and is still engaged behind the scenes with us. You've got folks from DHS, Self-Sufficiency, Oregon Commission for the Blind, Voc Rehab, and many other partners that I think I envision you thinking about in your mind, Debbie, already at the table. So I think there's opportunity to lean into that at future meetings, be it the executive committee or full board meetings. Our next one isn't until obviously December. So maybe it's executive committee or the second thing I was going to say, which is, you know, I guess if folks on this committee really, you know, wanted to create a space to bring the, you know, key leaders of the agencies together, we could definitely try to help coordinate that to get as many of them in the room as possible for conversations with y'all and with Coraggio. So those are a couple of things that come to mind, Susan, but happy to entertain others as well.
Todd, thank you. That's great. I guess I'm probably more envisioning accountability and coordinated activities and action items that support this findings and this work in a meaningful way. Like sometimes it feels that being on the board, we're coming to a meeting, everything's already been kind of decided or thought through or worked on. And there's not that time just to have, like we have in these meetings, a little bit more interaction and a little bit more input or hearing back and forth. And so I don't know, I'm thinking like, you know, is it at the working together? Is it the governor's annual meeting? Is there a place and a time where people can sit down face to face and really hash out some things that can help drive things further than just a board meeting? So,
yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that. Paul, I see your hand. Thanks for being patient.
No problem. Thank you for this report. And know before I even ask my question that I'm a bit of a shit starter. And so it's not really a reflection on you. It's much more a personality weakness of my own. But this is really more of a question maybe for Todd and Andrew. I think a lot of the initial direction that you were given to put this report together and to do the research for it came from an in-person meeting that many of us were at, or at least a virtually in-person meeting. And just to be very direct, like, I think this would have been the list of things that we knew were issues when we were putting that together. So Todd and Andrew, from your perspective, is is a big part of our goal here to just have an independent third party confirm that what we know about the general Oregon workforce space to be true? Or like, how do you see this adding value to the discussion? I think that's where I'm maybe not quite understanding. And it's probably, let's be honest, it's probably my fault for not helping to better clarify what we were looking for, but I'm just not sure what to do with this sort of initial report.
And Andrew and Todd, before you answer, Paul, maybe can I just go to like the KIC work sessions that are happening in October, which may help provide some clarity. So let me just go there real quick, and then Todd and Andrew, I'll let you do that. So we have 2 times scheduled with the KIC in October. And I'm going to go to the blue box on the right side of the screen first. You've had 2 reports that have come out and gone to the governors, right? And there's been some bright spots, and there have been, like, if again on that opportunities slide, there could be there are things in those opportunities that were in one or both of the reports previously, right? So to your point, Paul, there's a little bit of things still out there that you've known and haven't made progress on. So as we were thinking, like, how can this be different? It's the report is mandated. You have to submit it to the governor, right? But how can this be different? How can you make this really, try to be a catalyst for a different level of systems change, right? Which is, I think, what you're looking for. So we're proposing that your report focus on a limited number of levers. These are the big things that you can try to do, to really move the system in one way or another. And we want to make sure that you've got some really clear action plan and guidance of ownership of the action items. I know there were action plans with the other 2 reports, but we want this to feel really like we want you as KIC members to really feel clear, like who is going to do what by when, and really have that. Then we know that in the report, we want to have a different level of performance reporting and accountability mechanism that maybe the other reports didn't have. Like, how are you as KIC members and how is the governor going to hold everyone accountable to making these changes happen? And we'd also like to propose that members of the KIC present it to the WTDB at the December meeting. Whereas in the past 2, I've been at those report presentations because I was on the initial and the governance, and I was there with other colleagues from Coraggio reporting it out. We want this to feel different, right? And this may not answer your question totally, Paul, so I'm just going to go through this slide and then I'll turn it over to Todd and Andrew, and then we'll have you follow up. So we've got 2 work sessions scheduled. They should be on your calendar. The first work session, which is October 8th, we want to just get the findings and talk about those key improvement letters. What are the couple of big things the KIC can commit to do to really start to, have some different level of systems change happen? In the second work session, we really want to co-create that action plan and make sure that you all can leave feeling like you feel good that this action plan is really going to create a different level of systems change. And we hope that these 2 sessions will get us where we want to go. We've still got November to draft the report and finalize or refine things, that we might need to before it's got to go to the WTDB and governor. But that's at least our thinking of how can this be different from the past 2 reports to create a different level of change. But I'm going to step back. Todd, Andrew, Paul asked a very provocative question, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I will jump in at the risk of getting myself in trouble, and I know we don't have a lot of time. So I think you're right, Paul. I mean, I don't think that what was presented as, progress or areas of continuous need, I don't think were a surprise to any of us. And I think at sort of the end of the day, this is really about governor's willingness to change within the system or not. And I think from my perspective, having done the Groundhog Day for many years around some of this stuff, it's just like the clarity of a position from the governor so that I can stop asking the questions and move on to something else. Because I think that that's problematic. If in the absence of getting clarity from the governor's office, some of these are big questions. I want to come back and ask them again then, and I would much prefer to say, look, this doesn't matter to me, and I'm not going to do it. So just get off. I think we're in a really good position because we finally have a definition of the system. And I have been
Hey,
really
Andrew,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but it sounds like you're swimming. I don't know if you have a filter on your mic, but if any
Really
further thoughts.
lousy. I'm sorry, Caitlin, but I have a really lousy box in my office at the moment and no tech support. So maybe I'll just suffice to say that I do think we should be highly focused on asking very specific questions of the governor's office related to the system that the WTDB defined last June. This is the system. There's 5 agencies involved. There's 13 programs. If we were able to just organize those, it could have a transformative impact on Oregon's capacity to deliver services across the state, in my opinion. We have to be focused on the questions that we ask the governor because she deserves that level of clarity from us so that she doesn't have to sift through all the work that we've sifted through. And I'm optimistic that with a couple of these sessions, we'll be able to suss out what those questions should be. But at the end of the day, it's up to her.
Thanks, Andrew. And appreciate that. And thank you, whoever posted, like we had the wrong date in there for the second kick work session. It is the 24th. Jen changed it on the fly, but appreciate you all just catching that. Internal Coraggio error. Our second work session is the 24th. And Andrew, thank you for clarifying for Paul that, there's a lot of good questions that need to be asked for the governors, if I heard you correctly, office and some decisions that the governor's office needs to make about, performance of the system and what really needs to happen to make systems change happen. Todd, I saw you unmute. Is there more that you'd like to add from what Andrew had to share?
I too am having technical difficulties. I was struggling to hear what Andrew was saying. I got some of it. I guess, Paul, and I think part of what I heard you ask was, how is this different than that work we did at PGE at the beginning of the year? We had a facilitator sort of come in and help us. I think that meeting was more about sort of planning for the year for the committee, planning meetings and different subject matters that we wanted to bring raise up based on what the feedback and input from the committee was. Now, that's not to say that there isn't overlap, which you sort of got at in terms of, what we already know and what we've talked about previously finding its way into this conversation. Yeah, there's definitely that. But I think as is required by, the Senate bill and the legislation around the charge of this committee, that
Todd, Todd, if I may, I totally agree. I think we accomplished a variety of things at that meeting, and I don't mean to suggest that there's 100% overlap between this report and that meeting. What I do mean to suggest is that in the course of that discussion, I left that meeting feeling like we all sort of agree on the current state of things and where the problems are, and so we're going to ask. At that time, we had not named Coraggio, but we were going to ask for the course of this report to help us figure out the answers to those questions. And what it almost feels like is Coraggio has come back to us and says, hey, here's the things that are wrong, which are the same things that we all agreed in that meeting earlier this year. And so that's the part that I'm asking about. There were a whole bunch of things covered at that meeting beyond just this. And so I agree that was a good idea for the meeting. That's not my point. I just don't know that. I don't know we were learning anything new at this stage with what they've been able to generate from Coraggio, except to affirm what we all knew in February.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think there is some obvious confirmation of what a number of us, chatted about back in January, February. I don't know, Susan, Andrew, do you want to jump in with any other comments? I mean, as Susan said, we're not halfway yet through this. I think one of the value adds of the work that they're doing now is a much broader uh, network that they're reaching out to confirm what we may have already known or talked about, and then uncover, other pieces to the, biennial assessment that's required. Um,
I think maybe Paul, I'll just jump in as a kind of a concrete example of, and we did see the output of your gathering in January. So maybe just give you a real concrete example. So in our state benchmarking, what we, in the governance assessment, what we identified is that the role of the governor was really important, right? And just to build on what Andrew was saying earlier. What we didn't know from that initial state benchmarking, because we weren't asking questions specifically, is like, what did you do to get your governor and your legislature to really invest and create that mandate for the system? So that's maybe something that's different in our work today, that we're trying to figure out so that we can bring back to this committee in these work sessions and say, Texas, Florida's got a mandate from the governor. This is what they did to get there. Then you all can make a decision like from where you are today to where you want to be. Do you want to go down that same path? Is that going to work for Oregon? Do you want to do something different? That's just kind of like a concrete
Yeah,
example.
so another example, like a potential outcome would be, I'm just making this up, but like Governor Kotek has been very clear that she feels strongly that we need to address houselessness. What we may learn from Texas is that because their governor got more involved, they were able to actually make significant improvements in houselessness. And if we could show Governor Kotek that better attention to workforce development, okay, now I get it.
Yep,
Thank you.
exactly.
That was a great
What are the
clarification.
strategies that other states have deployed to make, to remove some of the barriers that you're currently facing in making systems change happen? So that would be something that I don't think you got, so that's trying to kind of diagnose what your levers are as a committee to make different change happen. And it's such a great question, Paul. Such a great question.
I got a feeling I'll be getting texts from Todd or Andrew later, but yes, thank you.
Kaylin, I know we're at time. We just had one last slide for next steps, but we'll turn it back over to you because I know we want to respect everyone's time here on the committee.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Any last thoughts or anything you want to add, Todd? Andrew, if you'd like to add anything, it'd be great if you drop it in the chat. Is there anything for the good of the order of the group? I know sometimes, Paul, it's hard to trust the process, right? Because we want to speed it up and get to the brass tacks, but unfortunately this is just part of the grind. So stay with it, please.
I mean, I'll take tin, I'll take rusty nails, whatever we got to do, Kaylin.
I appreciate you all. I truly do. All right, Andrew, I don't see anything in the chat. Todd's not coming off of mute. Nothing more for the good of the order. So friends from Kara. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
Oh, I was just going to thank Paul for the good question. I appreciate it very much. Please don't mistake my response with the spotty reception I'm getting and not being able to hear everything Andrew said. And I appreciate you very much, Susan, for chiming in with that good example about benchmarking with other states. And sort of back to Debbie's comment about how do we get agency leadership at the table? Maybe there's an opportunity for Andrew and I, with Sydney's help, to coordinate these next two work sessions. We'll have to talk with Susan and Carraggio's team to see if we could pull them in to meet your needs and thoughts there, Debbie. to maybe enrich that conversation. If not those two meetings on, I think I'm getting this right, the 8th and the 24th, not the 23rd. Maybe there's an opportunity to create another table where we could achieve that recommendation that you mentioned, Debbie. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and I'm more thinking about, after we get the recommendations and we really know where direction needs to be done, how are we engaging all the agencies that are going to pull all the stops and levers, as you call them, to make it happen? And if we're sitting eye to eye, looking at each other, whoever is saying, yes, I raise my hand, that's my job, we have a better chance of getting something done sooner than later, or letting it drop to the side. If it is important to this group and we've put the work and the investment of Coraggio's time and energy and all this, then we want to have outcomes. That's where I would be most excited about being at the table and going, yeah, what are we doing and who's doing it? And how can I impress upon them that that's important?
Spot on.
Yeah, great. Maybe that's something we can start talking about just this next month in October exec,
Yeah.
and then have that conversation. We could bake that into the agenda for the December board meeting, Debbie,
Okay.
and sort of start it there. Does that make
Sounds
sense?
good. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, there's some notes in the chat there, Susan and Jen. If you can grab those real quickly, it seems like it's some good stuff. Thank you all so much for your time. It's 4:02 p.m. We'll adjourn today's meeting and look forward to seeing you all in October.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for your time today.